Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny and many more, started smoking at age 9 and changed his name from Blank to Blanc after a teacher told him he would amount to nothing just like his name. He was once involved in a head-on collision at a Sunset Boulevard intersection known as Dead Man's Curve, a spot notorious for accidents. The crash resulted in a 2-week coma, and he was completely non-responsive until a doctor decided to ask him, "How are you feeling today, Bugs Bunny?" Blanc then responded to him in the voice of Bugs and thus woke up from the coma. This also happened in the middle of production for season 1 of The Flintstones, for which Blanc was the voice of Barney Rubble. So during his stay in the hospital, the other actors would crowd around his hospital bed to record their lines. Around 40 episodes of The Flintstones were recorded in this manner. After the legendary voice actor died from heart disease and emphysema in 1989, his tombstone read, "That's all, folks." On a cold winter night in 1977, 48-year-old Teresita Bassa was found brutally murdered in her Chicago apartment. Her body had been left naked under a burning mattress with a knife still embedded in her chest. The case quickly went cold with no suspects and no apparent motive, until months later when police received a chilling phone call. A local man claimed that his wife, who had worked with Teresita, began channeling messages from Teresita's ghost during trance-like states. During these eerie episodes, the woman would apparently speak in Teresita's voice, identifying her killer as a man named Alan Showery. Even more disturbingly, the alleged spirit named stolen items that were taken from her apartment, including specific pieces of jewelry that Showery had stolen from her. As absurd as it sounded, police followed these clues, and shockingly, they all checked out. Showery was arrested and eventually confessed, making this one of the most bizarre criminal cases in modern history. In 2016, Star Trek actor Anton Yelchin died in a freak accident at the young age of 27. After pulling into his driveway in his Jeep Grand Cherokee, Yelchin went to check his locked gate for mail when the car suddenly rolled back down the driveway and pinned him against a pillar connected to the gate. It's unknown how long it took for the actor to pass, but he was found dead by friends hours after he failed to arrive at rehearsal, and the official cause of death was blunt traumatic asphyxia. Yelkin's particular car model had a known design flaw that confused drivers about whether it was properly in park, and was later recalled due to faulty gear shifters. If you think you have high cholesterol, this guy will make you feel a lot better, or should I say, a lot butter. A Florida man in his 40s followed an extreme carnivore diet for 8 months, consuming nothing but beef, butter, and cheese. He often ate entire sticks of butter and several pounds of cheese each day, causing his total cholesterol to skyrocket to over 1,000 milligrams per deciliter, while anything over 200 is considered high. As a result, he developed painless yellow cholesterol nodules on his palms, elbows, and the soles of his feet. Despite this, the patient said he felt great following the diet, and was able to lose weight while significantly improving his energy levels and mental clarity. Just 2 days after his 18th birthday, star football player Warwick Dunn lost his police officer mother in a fatal shooting while she was off duty. But despite this, Dunn raised his 5 siblings while in college and was selected as the 12th overall pick in the NFL draft. He's since funded and built over 150 homes for single mothers, using his wealth to improve their lives. In 2008, suspected serial killer Ricky Simmons was found dead of heat stroke in the trunk of his ex-girlfriend's car. Investigators believe Simmons was waiting in the trunk to ambush and murder his ex-girlfriend when he became locked in the vehicle. A few years after receiving a bone marrow transplant to treat his leukemia in 2019, Nevada man Chris Long discovered that the DNA in his blood and semen had been completely replaced by that of his donor. Long had essentially become a chimera, a person with 2 different sets of DNA. He was quoted saying, "I thought it was pretty incredible that I can just disappear and someone else can appear." Experts say this was an extremely rare case, but one that raises serious questions about forensic evidence at crime scenes. In 2012, tragedy struck when 30-year-old newlywed Maria Pantazopoulos was having some trash the dress photos taken in Montreal while wearing her wedding dress. She was only standing in about a foot of water on a river when her gown became waterlogged, quickly pulling her deeper and deeper underwater as her dress suddenly weighed up to 100 pounds. The photographer did everything he could to save her before Maria cried out, "I can't anymore, it's too heavy," and then she let go. Her body was recovered by a scuba diver 2 hours later. In 2008, a college student from Belgium decided to heat up some leftover spaghetti that had been sitting out on the kitchen counter for 5 days. He told his parents that it tasted strange, but figured it was the new tomato sauce that he added to the pasta. After eating the entire bowl, he headed out to play some soccer but had to return home 30 minutes later while suffering from severe abdominal pains, headaches, and nausea. He then vomited for several hours before finally managing to fall asleep, but he never woke up. The man's lifeless body was discovered the next morning after he died from an extreme form of food poisoning known as Bacillus cereus, aka fried rice syndrome. In 2021, Lady Gaga's dog walker Ryan Fisher was walking 3 of her French bulldogs in Hollywood when he was suddenly attacked by 2 men. After being shot in the chest, which resulted in permanent damage including the partial loss of a lung, he still tried to protect the dogs, but 2 of them were taken. Gaga later offered a $500K reward for the return of her pets, and 2 days later, a woman brought the dogs to an LA police station. The woman was later arrested along with 4 others in connection with the crime and tried to sue Gaga for not paying the reward money, asking for the $500K plus another $15 million for financial damages, pain and suffering, mental anguish, loss of enjoyment of life, and legal fees. She claimed that she never would have returned the dogs if not for the promised reward, and was therefore defrauded because she ended up with no dogs and no reward. The woman ended up losing the case, while shooter James Jackson pleaded no contest to attempted murder and was sentenced to 21 years in prison. In 2006, 40-year-old actress Adrienne Shelley was found dead in her apartment bathroom, hanging from a shower rod in the bathtub with a bedsheet around her neck. Though initially ruled a suicide, it was later determined that Shelley was murdered by a construction worker who was trying to rob her. After breaking into her home, the 19-year-old had accidentally knocked her unconscious while covering her mouth to prevent her from screaming, but decided to kill her and make it look like a suicide out of fear of getting caught and sent back to Ecuador since he was an illegal immigrant. When the Goths attacked Constantinople in 378 AD, they were left stunned when one of the defenders stormed out of the city completely naked, decapitated one of the attackers, and proceeded to drink the blood flowing from his neck. Shortly after witnessing this, the Goths retreated in horror. During a 1900 college football game in San Francisco, hundreds of fans climbed on the roof of a glass factory to watch the game. But the roof wasn't built to support so much weight and eventually collapsed, dumping the fans into a scorching hot glass furnace where 22 of them died horribly and hundreds more were injured. Despite the tragedy, the game was never paused. When he was a young boy, actor Terrence Howard witnessed his dad stab a man to death while they were waiting in line to take pictures with Santa Claus at a department store in what became known as the Santa line slaying. The victim, who was also with his family, reportedly made a racist comment to Terrence's father Tyrone after he thought he cut the line, which quickly escalated to a fatal fight. Tyrone was arrested and pleaded self-defense since the other man attacked first and was sentenced to 11 months in prison. After a deadly Peruvian avalanche in 1962, 2 American climbers traveled down to investigate and later warned Peruvian authorities that there is a threat of a much larger avalanche just waiting to happen. These warnings were not only ignored but actively suppressed by the Peruvian government, as the climbers were accused of fear-mongering and anyone who even mentioned their research was arrested. 8 years later, the deadliest avalanche in history occurred there, completely destroying the town of Yungay while killing over 30,000 people. Just last year, a man from India sliced open his pregnant wife's womb with a sickle to check the gender of the 8-month-old fetus. He wanted to make sure it was a baby boy after the couple had 5 daughters in a row and a priest told them it would be another girl. The baby ended up being a boy, but died as a result of the husband's heinous actions. A woman boarding a flight in Orlando was recently arrested after killing her dog in the airport bathroom. She apparently didn't have the right paperwork for her dog to board and couldn't take it, so she went to the bathroom and drowned it. In 2003, teenage Nevada siblings Bo and Monique Maestas bought some meth but were given salt instead. Outraged, the 2 went to confront their dealer at his home, but the door was answered by the dealer's young children instead. Despite this, the siblings attacked the children, slitting the throat of a 3-year-old and stabbing her in the head, while a 10-year-old girl was left paralyzed after a knife severed her spinal cord. 19-year-old Bo was sentenced to death, while his 16-year-old sister received life in prison. When Jim Morrison died in France at the age of 27, no autopsy was performed as it was not required by French law. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure, but several witnesses say he actually overdosed in a nightclub bathroom and his drug dealers carried his body to his apartment bathtub. However, these claims couldn't be verified without an autopsy. During the siege of Leningrad, the city was blockaded by Nazi Germany for 872 days. Food supplies were so scarce that people resorted to eating wallpaper paste and even boiled leather from furniture. In the worst cases, cannibalism was documented by people digging up corpses and consuming them. Despite this, the city never surrendered, and about 1 million civilians died during the deadly siege. In the year 897, Pope Stephen VI had his dead predecessor, Pope Formosus, dug up, dressed in papal robes, and put on trial simply because the new pope hated him. They propped his decayed corpse on a throne, screamed at it, and found him guilty since he obviously had no defense. Formosus was stripped of his papacy while his corpse had 3 of its fingers cut off before being thrown in a river. The public was horrified by this grotesque trial, as Stephen VI was soon imprisoned and strangled to death. Formosus's body was later recovered from the river, reburied with honors, and his papacy was eventually reinstated by a later pope. Virginia Giuffre became one of the most prominent victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell when she fearlessly accused Epstein and Prince Andrew of repeatedly sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager in the early 2000s. But just today, the 41-year-old mother of 3 reportedly posted on Instagram claiming she only has 4 days to live after her car was struck by a school bus. Along with an image of her appearing badly bruised, Virginia wrote, "This year has been the worst start to a new year. I won't bore anyone with the details, but I think it's important to note that when a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers per hour, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well be a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure and they've given me 4 days to live. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time." The post has left people asking many questions, with some believing it to be a sick April Fool's joke or a cover-up for the fact that she was actually murdered. While filming the 1972 film Napoleon and Samantha, 9-year-old Jodie Foster was mauled by a substitute lion on set. The big cat picked Foster up, shook her around like a rag doll, and only released her when its trainer yelled, "Drop it." Foster later said she was in shock and thought it was an earthquake as she watched the rest of the crew run away. The same lion had nearly mauled Bob Denver while filming an episode of Gilligan's Island years earlier, and shouldn't have been anywhere near a film studio afterwards. Foster still has scars on her stomach and back from the incident and has suffered from severe ailurophobia ever since. Almost immediately after being liberated from concentration camps, an estimated 14,500 Holocaust survivors died from refeeding syndrome, since their bodies couldn't process normal food after such prolonged starvation. During the back surgery of a Hawaiian man in 2006, the surgeon couldn't find the 2 titanium rods that were supposed to be implanted into the man's spine, so he decided to improvise by implanting the shaft of a screwdriver instead. The screwdriver eventually snapped, and the man died 2 years later following 3 more corrective back surgeries. The patient's family was eventually awarded $5.6 million in a malpractice lawsuit. In 2022, James Grimes won an air guitar competition while on a cruise to Mexico, which was the last thing he remembered before waking up overboard in the Gulf of America without a single ship in sight. Grimes had to tread water for over 18 hours and endure countless stings from 2 swarms of jellyfish before he was finally rescued by the Coast Guard. 17-year-old Lisa Noland planned to take her own life just before she was abducted by serial killer Bobby Joe Long. He raped her several times and held her hostage for 26 hours until she managed to convince him to let her go. Lisa got the man captured, while the traumatic experience gave her a new lease on life and inspired her to become a police officer. After brutally murdering his ex-girlfriend's parents with a baseball bat in 2001, just last week, South Carolina man Brad Sigmund was executed via firing squad, the first such execution in the United States since 2010. Sigmund was given a choice and opted for firing squad over the other state-approved methods of lethal injection and the electric chair, since he said it was much quicker than the other methods, which have inflicted prolonged and potentially torturous deaths on his friends. Sigmund was strapped to a metal chair with a hood over his head and a target placed over his heart, while 3 volunteer officers fired at him from 15 feet away. In 1915, a strange illness called encephalitis lethargica broke out across the globe. Nicknamed the sleeping sickness, the disease attacked the patient's brains, leaving them frozen in a statue-like state, fully conscious but unable to move or speak. One of the most haunting aspects of this disease was its unpredictability. Some patients recovered quickly, never experiencing any long-term effects, while others went into a deep coma and never woke up. Then there were patients who seemed completely recovered, until years later when the illness came back and suddenly turned them catatonic. At least 500,000 people died from the terrifying disease before it vanished without explanation 10 years later, just as suddenly as it appeared. While many theories have been put forth over the last century, epidemiologists still remain haunted by the mysterious sickness and its unknown origins. Some say it never left, but still lingers in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Despite having no prior acting experience, 12-year-old Kevin Clark was cast as drummer Freddie Jones in the cult classic School of Rock. Sadly, he died in 2021 at the age of 32 after being fatally struck by a car while riding his bike in Chicago. In 1978, 134 Chinese sailors were killed because a Navy lieutenant broke up with his girlfriend. After being dumped, she took her own life, leading to the man being discharged from duty pending the investigation. So while raging on his last voyage home, he decided to detonate the charges on the ship, causing it to sink while killing 134 sailors on board. Scientists have conducted studies where they transferred gut bacteria from schizophrenic humans to mice, resulting in the mice exhibiting schizophrenic behaviors. This suggests a potential link between gut health and the development of mental disorders. In 1997, 50-year-old Massachusetts woman Judy Smith was in Philadelphia with her husband when she told him she was going out sightseeing in the city, but she never returned. Months later, her body was found in a forest 600 miles away in North Carolina, wearing different clothes and a new backpack. She had been mysteriously stabbed to death, and her killer remains unidentified to this day. Iconic actor Jack Nicholson has faced his fair share of legal controversies over the years. In 1996, he reportedly assaulted an unnamed Hollywood socialite at a party and ruptured her breast implants. Then that same year, he allegedly promised a prostitute named Catherine Sheehan $1,000 for sex and then assaulted her when she asked for the money. Sheehan claimed that Nicholson promptly grabbed her by the hair, thumped her head on the floor, and then threw her out of his house. She received a $40,000 settlement, but later argued that this was insufficient to cover her injuries, including brain damage, which she said was actually killing her. In 1849, Henry Box Brown escaped from slavery by shipping himself in a small wooden crate from Virginia to Philadelphia. Despite the instructions on the box of handle with care and this side up, carriers placed the box upside down or handled it roughly several times. 350 miles and 27 brutal hours later, Brown stepped out of the box a free man and went on to become a magician. When later asked why he went to such an extreme to escape slavery, Brown was quoted saying, "If you've ever been deprived of liberty as I was, you cannot realize the power of that hope of freedom." In 1963, Frank Sinatra's 19-year-old son Frank Jr. was kidnapped from his hotel room in Lake Tahoe and held for ransom. He was released 2 days later when his father agreed to pay the $240,000, and the three perpetrators were captured and arrested soon afterwards. But the kidnapping had a lasting traumatic impact on Frank Sr., who began carrying dimes in his pockets everywhere he went, since the kidnappers demanded all communication be done through payphones, and Frank was concerned that one day he wouldn't have enough change to call them. It became such a habit that the legendary singer was even buried with 10 dimes in his pocket after he died. In January of 1993, Texas attorney David Glenn Lewis planned on watching the Super Bowl alone at home while his wife and daughter were out shopping, but when they returned, there was no sign of him. They found freshly made sandwiches in the fridge, David's laundry in the washing machine, and David's watch and wedding ring on the counter, but no David in sight. The next night, a man was killed in a hit-and-run 1,600 miles away near Yakima, Washington, and 11 years later, the body would be identified as David Glenn Lewis. How David ended up 1,600 miles away so quickly and the circumstances surrounding his death remain total mysteries to this day. Last year, Wisconsin elementary school teacher Madison Bergman faced 10 felony charges for having an inappropriate relationship with her 5th grade student. Investigators were shown disturbing screenshots of their text conversations, in which Bergman would talk about how much she enjoyed making out with the young student. The two also exchanged over 100 letters, love notes, and artwork over several months. She was reportedly still graping him up to 3 months before she was supposed to get married to her fiancé. Bergman has pleaded not guilty to all 10 counts. Ohio sex worker Linda Lassess prompted a multi-state public health alert after police discovered she'd slept with more than 200 clients while knowing she was HIV positive. Officers worked hard to contact her clients and suggest getting tested so they could seek the proper treatment. Randy Woodfield was drafted by the NFL to play for the Green Bay Packers in 1974, but was soon cut from the team due to a series of indecent exposure arrests. He would go on to become the I-5 killer and is believed to have been responsible for over 40 murders throughout the early 1980s. When the 2-year-old daughter of Chelsea Camp was being mauled by a vicious pit bull, the Texas mother had to act fast. She jumped on the dog's back and bit off its ear before shoving her fist down its throat to save her little girl. Both suffered serious wounds from the dog, which belonged to Chelsea's boyfriend and was normally very friendly, but suddenly turned on the toddler. The pit bull was still attacking when police arrived and had to be euthanized. In 2007, a Rhode Island hospital was fined $50,000 and reprimanded by the State Department of Health after brain surgeries were performed on the wrong side of the patient's head 3 separate times in the same year. During the mating process, dogs and other canines get stuck together for anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. It's a natural physical mechanism called a copulatory tie where both of their genitalia interlock to ensure fertilization. The first time dogs mate, they're often surprised by this and show signs of distress while trying to pull away or run. A man from Vietnam had endured severe headaches for 5 months before finally going to the hospital. After a CT scan, the man and his doctors were shocked to find that a pair of chopsticks were lodged in his skull. It turned out that the man had been involved in a drunken fight 5 months prior that he barely remembered, and somehow ended up with chopsticks deep up his nose as a result. In 1989, 56-year-old Ole Benson laughed so uncontrollably while watching a fish called Wanda that he went into cardiac arrest. His heart rate reportedly spiked to over 300 beats per minute before he died at the movie theater. In 1814, a massive vat at a London brewery suddenly burst, sending 300,000 gallons of beer surging through the streets in a devastating flood. The torrent destroyed homes and claimed the lives of 8 people, including 5 mourners who were attending the wake of a little boy who had drowned just a day prior. One of those victims was the boy's mother, who was still holding her child's coffin when her body was found. A woman undergoing pancreatic surgery was accidentally set on fire after alcohol-based sanitizer met an electrical scalpel. Her body ignited in seconds, and she died from severe burns after doctors tried to put her out with a bucket of water. In 2011, a 16-year-old girl from China had been dealing with chronic headaches for years and finally decided to get them checked out. Doctors were shocked to find a fully formed tumor containing hair, bone, and multiple teeth, likely the remnants of a parasitic twin inside of her skull. It had been pressing against her brain tissue, and the headache stopped upon its removal. Here's a photo of some children who were part of the 1980s Australian cult called The Family. The group was run by Anne Hamilton Byrne, who believed she was Jesus, and illegally adopted 28 children before raising them in total isolation. All were given the surname Hamilton Byrne, the same clothing, and the same haircut and dyed hair color. The kids were imprisoned, routinely drugged with LSD, and brainwashed into believing that Anne was their real mother. They were denied nearly all access to the outside world and subjected to a strict discipline that included starvation diets and frequent beatings. During all of this, the children were told that they were part of a chosen group of superior beings who would survive an impending apocalypse and eventually rebuild and lead the new world. The compound was eventually raided in 1987 after a member escaped and blew the whistle on the cult, but Anne managed to avoid jail time, only paying a measly $5,000 fine due